Oh, hi there, and welcome to my 10.1.5 Moonkin guide. It's time to throw stars, baby. The stat you want to look for on a Boomkin is primarily Mastery. Mastery is quite reminiscent of the Shadow Priest Mastery, where simply having our main two dots, Sunfire and Moonfire, on a target will make us do more damage. Afterwards, the priority goes as Haste, then Crit, and Versatility. However, the rule of thumb is Mastery and then a bit of everything else. Now, going over the class tree, you don't get a whole lot of damage nodes. Most of your class tree is Utility, Movement, Survivability. The reason for this is that your class tree has to encompass ranged DPS, melee DPS, tank, and a healer. However, there are a few nodes that you will always pick up regarding DPS as a Boomkin. You will of course always be in Moonkin form. Nurturing Instinct gives you a slight magic damage increase. Rising Light and Falling Night grants you either increased damage or increased versatility, both are fine. And then the last major damage node is Lucario's Teachings, which is just 6% more mastery by being in our primary form. You can also make it so that going into bear form just gives you 6% versatility in case you need to soak an ability or you need some more defensiveness. Talking about defensiveness and utility, Moonkins are one of the tankier casters in this game. Reason being both having access to an amazing defensive such as Barkskin, but also being able to shift into bear form and having access to Frenzied Regeneration, which is an amazing heal over time. You also have a passive 6% reduced damage taken. When you use Barkskin, you get an Absorb Shield. If you fall below 40% health, you gain Frenzied Regeneration. You also gain access to Renewal, which is just an instant 30% heal. So a lot of our defensiveness comes from actually just healing ourselves or healing others. On the other hand, our utility is very, very nice. You can pick up Typhoon, you can pick up Hibernate, you can pick up Cyclone, you can pick up Ursul's Vortex or Mass Entanglement in certain situations like Razaketh. You also gain access to Soothe, so you can remove enrage effects. You've got Stampeding Roar, which is an amazing movement ability, and you can have a single target stun or a AoE incapacitate. Utility-wise, balanced druids are great. Going over the class tree. Now, luckily for Boomkins, you can do 3 general builds, which I have labeled as single target, a compromise build, and M+ build. I will explain the differences when we get to each one of them. For your single target, getting down to New Moon, and getting Radiant Moonlight, getting Incarnation, another point in the single target talent tree is that you pick up Warrior of Elune. This is so that whenever we need to, we can go straight into our solar eclipse, which is going to be our single target eclipse. I will explain the purpose of eclipses in the core rotation part. Other notable talents you will pick up is going to be Rattle the Stars. Rattle the Stars is an amazing damage increase. However, Starweaver can be useful in situations where you have multiple adds coming in. However, your main focus will still be your single target. The biggest damage node that you can actually get, and where a lot of the Boomkin damage actually comes from, is the Celestial Alignment. This is of course being replaced by Incarnation, which is just an improved version where Celestial Alignment grants us both our eclipses at the same time and grants us 10% haste, while Incarnation grants us both eclipses, 10% haste, and 10% crit. Due to the bursty nature of Boomkins, going into Primordial Arcanic Pulsar is the only real choice you have. But let's say that you want some AoE or a slight cleave potential without losing a whole lot of your single target. Well, this is the compromise build. The compromise build, we pick up improved Sunfire, so our Sunfire applies to every target in range. Now, the major damage nodes that we change this are that we are losing Warrior of Elune, we are losing Nature's Balance, and picking up Starfall. We will also swap from New Moon over to Fury of Elune, as this does more AoE damage and is a great source of astral power. This build doesn't really lose a whole lot on single target, but you gain access to a whole lot more AoE. But Shreddy, what about our Mythic Plus setup? Well, luckily for Mythic Plus to the compromise build, there's only one talent we need to change, and that is Balance of All Things needs to go into Nature's Balance. So when we talk about the core rotation, the core setup of Boomkin, we gotta talk about eclipses. So whenever we use either 2 Starfires or 2 Rafts, we go into the opposite eclipse. Using 2 rafts, we will go into a lunar eclipse. Using 2 starfires, we will go into a solar eclipse. This will last for 15 seconds, and then we will be reset to a base once again. The main thing of when to go into eclipses and choosing your eclipses can make a huge difference in your overall DPS. Primarily in 1 or 2 target encounters, you want to go into your solar eclipse. This is because Wrath has a shorter cast time than Starfire. At 3 targets, if you are in your cooldown, you want to use Wrath, because that grants you more astral power per cast and more damage. Or if you have your lunar eclipse, you will be using Starfire. At 4 or more targets, you want to prioritize lunar eclipse and thereby Starfire. So when we talk about our single target priority and rotation, it's quite simple. You want to keep up your 2 dots, which is Sunfire and Moonfire, and then you want to try and spend as much time in solar eclipse as possible. Make sure you're using Star Search so you don't overcap on your astral power, and then try to fit in new moons so that you never sit on 2 charges. This is our single target priority. Now, our opener's boomkin is a little more tricky, but the reason why it's tricky is because we want to precast 2 rafts so that we go straight into a fight with an eclipse active. So how you want to go is basically the same as single target, however this time we'll just use our incarnation once we have our dots up. So our opener goes as follows. You want to go Wrath, keep up dots, incarnation, and start dumping, making sure to use trinkets and just dump as many damage abilities as you have into the target, which includes your Star Searches, making sure you keep up your dots, and that's basically it. Continue with your single target priority, making sure that you keep your moon charges going so you don't lose out on charges, and make sure that you keep 1 in reserve for whenever you need a big burst of astral power. Now that we're out of our incarnation, we can go Warrior of Elune and go straight back into solar eclipse, and then we can just continue onwards with our main rotation. Now you want to try to maximize your Star Searches at the end of your cooldowns so that you can maximize your benefit from it. But yeah, that's about it. Now going into how we actually play Boomkin in M+, it's very similar to our single target, except now we're just focusing on Starfall rather than Star Search. As soon as there are more than 2 targets, Starfall just does way more damage and is also extending our duration of our dots. So what you want to do is make sure that your first priority going into a pack is to get your dots up. Always get your dots up. This is hugely important to our mastery. Then go straight into an eclipse or use your cooldowns, and then Starfall until you're 0, use Fury of Elune as much as possible, and then just get as many Starfalls in while you're spamming your Starfires. And this is basically your AoE rotation. You just want to focus on keeping up everything. See, now we're out of our eclipse, so I'm actually going back into an eclipse. And then it's basically just going straight into our AoE rotation where we use Starfire rather than Wrath, making sure to reapply our dots, and then go back into our lunar eclipse, pop Fury of Elune, and then spam your Starfall. AoE is so lovely, simply due to all of the raining stars. Now before I end the video, I want to talk about the cancel aura macros that some people say you have to play in order to actually maximize your boomkin damage. There are 3 general ideas that you could consider using a cancel aura macro. The first one is a cancel aura macro for your primordial arcanic pulsar. It is a fairly relevant gain if you can cancel pulsar once during your opener to make it line up with Fury of Elune for all future windows where you have arcanic pulsar. Now this is very much depending on your gear, so how much haste you have, when do you use Bloodlust in the group, and it's probably going to be a lot based on boss timers more so than actual playability. I wouldn't recommend using that as a cancel or a macro, simply because the potential damage loss in case you get a desync is going to be more than the actual gain from it. Your second option is in your pure single target build with Warrior of Elune. It is a very, very slight increase to your single target DPS if you cancel the last Starfire. However, it is so minor that once again, it's not something I would recommend doing at all. The only reason we use Warrior of Elune is to go back into a solar eclipse, and we only need 2 Starfires for that. So the last Starfire is kind of wasted, and the cooldown won't start until you actually use your 3rd Starfire. I personally just hardcast 1 additional Starfire rather than getting the cooldown back faster. It is such a minor difference that I would recommend not using a Cancel Aura macro. The last Cancel Aura macro is about Starlord. So Starlord is amazing, it gives you 12% haste, however it lasts for 15 seconds. Gaining a new stack won't refresh the duration, and it can stack up to 3 times, right? So the idea is that you would cancel Starlord if you have like 2 or 3 seconds left of Starlord, but you still have a lot of astral power, right? It can be a fairly significant gain to cancel Starlord if you only have a few seconds left, compared to just canceling it and starting a new Starlord window. That would be the only one I would recommend using a Cancel Aura macro for. Now, this is an example of how you would do a Cancel Aura macro. It's very simply just Cancel Aura and then the ability or buff you want to cancel, and then call it whatever you want and the icon you want. Just find it. Now you have a Cancel Aura macro. But yeah, that's actually all I have to say about Boomkin. Hopefully you'll subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!